All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Marco Balance. My name is Mark, and I'm really excited to talk about the next installment to one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars Visions Volume 3. It's no secret that I am a huge advocate for Star Wars Visions. I've done countless episodes throughout the years. I've done video essays on specific shorts like The Village Bride. I think it is one of the most essential pieces of Star Wars that we have right now because it pushes the boundaries of what a Star Wars story can be, and it takes risks in a time when Star Wars storytelling is becoming more and more safe. It also continues the storied tradition of Star Wars animation, which, in my opinion, has been the most consistent form of storytelling in Star Wars, and frankly, the most underrated, even today. Now, for Visions Volume 3, we are returning to Japan and some of the most prominent anime studios working in the industry today, some even returning to continue the stories from Volume 1 that they started back in 2021, which I was really looking forward to. So for today's episode, I'm going to give you my overall thoughts on Visions Volume 3 as a whole, and then I'm going to dive into each episode of this season, give you my broad thoughts. I'm not going to go too in depth on most of these episodes. One, because it'll take too long, and two, some of these episodes I don't have much to say. They didn't really connect with me, but on the other hand, there are other episodes that I loved, and I will go a bit more in detail on those ones, but I think two in particular I'm going to make completely separate episodes on because I think there's just so much to dive into, and there's so much I loved about them. Alright, so as someone who is constantly praising this series, what did I think of this third installment? To be honest, I think Visions Volume 3 is my least favorite season of the series so far. I say that while also acknowledging that the final episode of this season, titled Black, is a groundbreaking piece of Star Wars media, and I think every Star Wars fan should check it out. It is like nothing you've ever seen before. And there are a handful of other shorts that I really enjoyed my time with, especially the follow-up to Village Bride, The Lost Ones. I think that's an incredible short. But by and large, I felt like too many of these shorts played it safe this season. And as I've mentioned before, the strength of Star Wars Visions typically came from the fact that it wasn't safe. It took risks in its storytelling. And even its more straightforward stories, it was elevated by some other aspect, like a unique form of animation or a twist on the typical Star Wars story. I also think the novelty of seeing Star Wars in the anime style of animation has slightly worn off, and in Season 1, it was new, it was fresh, but now coming into Season 3, I think we wanted to see an evolution of that style in Star Wars, and I think a lot of these shorts played it safe on the animation front and maybe relied on the draw of anime a bit too much, and they made their stories too straightforward. Now, I did still enjoy a lot of these shorts. I think they all have the heart that I love so much about Visions. I think they convey those classic Star Wars themes so well, and they mirror Star Wars stories we've seen before in slightly varied ways. But ultimately, I was really only moved by 3 shorts in total, which is a lot lower than in previous seasons. Let's dive into the shorts. I'll go one by one, give you my broad thoughts. I'm not going to go too deep into a lot of these. Some of them I won't have much to say at all, to be completely honest. But others I'll do a bit of a deep dive on, and definitely look out for separate episodes on 2 in particular, because I have a lot more to say about them, and I don't want to cram that into this episode where they might get lost. So let's start with the follow-up to the first ever Star Wars Vision episode that we got back in 2021, The Duel Payback. This short continues the story of Ronin, who is an ex-Sith who is hunting other Sith and taking their Kyber crystals. It's a really interesting concept and world that they created within this alternate Star Wars galaxy. I enjoyed The Duel back in Visions Volume 1. It's not very deep on storytelling, but is really more of an aesthetic. The choreography is cool, and it gives you those Kurosawa vibes. And it's pretty much the same here in Volume 3 with the sequel. Though I do think they stepped up their game on the world building and story side of things. They incorporate a theme into this one, which I don't think was really explored in the first volume. I haven't read the Ronin spin-off novel that might build out this world a bit more and explain why there are Sith hunting other Sith and why dark side users are in tune with their dark side, but also have a clear enough vision to acknowledge the light side as well. I'm only going off what I've seen in the shorts, and to me, it's a bit confused with the typical Star Wars themes. I think it's an interesting world that if I maybe had more context, I might enjoy more. I like how they made the Jedi feel intimidating in this one, like they are the hunter and the Sith are the hunted. The Jedi are also called Crusaders, they're more militaristic. The main Jedi who is hunting Ronin is more machine than man. It's a nice flip on Darth Vader. And they also have the Sith work with Ewoks to fight back against the Republic, so it's another nod to Return of the Jedi in a darker way. But like I said, I enjoyed that they incorporated the theme of a dark side user acknowledging the light side and the dark side, and that they do need to live in harmony. I don't totally agree with the philosophy that a dark side user is fully in tune with their dark side, but that's okay in the end because they acknowledge their light side. That kind of goes against the principal themes of Star Wars. It's not that dark side and light side need to be in equal parts. It's more so that there needs to be a balance of you embracing your light side, but also acknowledging that you do have a darkness to yourself. Again, the book might explain that more, but here at face value, this short is really cool to look at. The choreography is awesome. The relationship between the two Sith that builds is pretty cool, and I like what they did with the Jedi. But overall, the message of this is a bit jumbled in a Star Wars context, I think. Next up, we have The Song of Four Wings, which I really enjoyed, actually. This was one of my favorite of this season. It's a really heartfelt story that deals with loss and trauma, but in a very lighthearted way, if that makes sense. We follow a rebel princess who is doing rounds on a snow-covered planet, looking for Imperial activity to make sure that the rebel base is not found out by the Empire. Yes, this is very much the setup to Empire Strikes Back, but there are some cool wrinkles in here. She plays this very techno music, which I think is an interesting choice for Star Wars, but it does work in this setting. I do like how they flesh out her backstory without dumping too much exposition. And the MVP of this short is Whoopus. I would die for Whoopus. The shared trauma between Whoopus and the princess is really endearing, and the main message of the story is that there is a reason you are still here. And I thought that's a beautiful message to send through Star Wars. I think it's exemplified through our characters, and it really got me. I enjoyed this short so much. The 3D animation worked really well for this story. Although it was straightforward and it takes elements from other Star Wars stories we've seen, I think it does it in an interesting way and has characters we really care about by the end. So definitely one of the highlights for me this season. Alright, let's talk about The Ninth Jedi: Child of Hope. This is the sequel to probably the most popular Star Wars Vision short we've gotten, The Ninth Jedi. It was so popular that we are getting an entire series based on The Ninth Jedi. I enjoyed the story of this short a lot. I think the world that they're building in The Ninth Jedi within Star Wars is really grand and ambitious in its scale. But my God, the animation in this short is brutal. I don't know what happened because this is Production IG, who is a legendary anime studio. And Ninth Jedi from Volume 1 was so fluid and so fantastic. The animation in the sequel here is rough. There are some good animated sections of this story, no doubt, but there is also some horrible usage of CGI throughout this. And if you don't watch a lot of anime, or you don't watch a lot of animation in general, CGI is a very controversial topic. It can be used very smartly, like in Attack on Titan, or it could be used as a very cheap method to animate things, and it looks horrible because of it. And there are several instances throughout this short where CGI is used on our main character, and it looks atrocious. I don't know what happened. I don't know if they were forced to do a sequel for Volume 3 so that people would be hyped for Ninth Jedi to return as a series next year, so they didn't have as much time to work on it. But unfortunately, the animation quality in this one took me out of the story so much. Even though I like the direction of the story, the whole relationship between Tito, the droid that she runs into, and his master, and where their story goes, I like all of that. And it's interesting to see a group of bounty hunters that hunt Jedi specifically in this galaxy. But man, I could not get over some of the animated cuts in here. I also think the story just has a really messy opening sequence that separates our main character from the group, and it doesn't make much sense, and it kind of undercuts the relationship that they were building from the first short. Again, this felt very rushed to me in every sense of the word. I'm not sure what happened, but I hope to God that they do not mess up the series that comes out next year. If they put this much CGI into that series and they ruin the first full anime Star Wars series because of cheaping out on animation, I will be the most upset person. I promise you that. So yeah, The Ninth Jedi Child of Hope was a big disappointment for me, but I am hopeful for the story going forward. Next up, we have The Bounty Hunters, which comes from my favorite anime studio of all time, Wit Studio, who created Attack on Titan and Vinland Saga, two stories that are near and dear to my heart, some of my favorite stories of all time. So you can imagine I had big expectations coming into this one, and of course, Wit delivered great animation, but again, this was just a very straightforward story, and I just expected more from the minds at Wit Studio. Wit also has a great track record of picking amazing composers to create music for their works, and I didn't really notice the music at all in this one, which was unfortunate. I did enjoy that this story tackled some heavy themes like grief, loss, slavery, and corporate exploitation of people and workers, but it was pretty obvious where the story was going from the second that our main protagonist and her droid meet the CEO of a company and he hires them for a job. You know where the story's heading, so there was no surprises in this one. It definitely mirrored the early seasons of Mandalorian where he gets hired by the Imperials and he knows that something's up, and when he meets Grogu, he's like, you know what? I don't feel comfortable about doing this job. I'm actually just going to save this kid. This story definitely took influence from that. I also liked that her droid had this Jekyll and Hyde personality where it's a medical droid one moment and then it's an assassin droid in another moment. That was super creative. Enjoyed that a lot. But yeah, I just wish there was more surprise and twist in this story. And it's Wit Studio, so I was just expecting a lot going in. This isn't a bad short. It's enjoyable. Just doesn't push the boundary much. I'm going to skip this next short, Yuko's Treasure. This one's definitely aimed more towards children, and there are some sweet moments in here, but I don't have much to say about it. If you have kids and want to check out Star Wars Visions, this definitely would be a really good one to show them. Next up, we have the sequel to Village Bride, one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars ever, The Lost Ones. I was so excited for this short when it was announced that we were getting a follow-up to F's story. I had so much confidence that this studio would deliver, and they absolutely did. The Lost Ones is another character-driven Star Wars story with all of the classic Star Wars themes weaved throughout it, while also having a fantastic score that calls back to motifs that we heard in The Village Bride, but brings in brand new musical pieces to accent the more epic scale of conflict that we see in this short compared to Village Bride. F as a character is so undeniably selfless that you can't help but be connected to her. She has the same aura of Ahsoka Tano in the later seasons of Clone Wars, where there's no length she wouldn't go to help someone else. And here we see her face off against her biggest trial yet, her former master. And the staging of this conflict is beautiful. The imagery of the red rose that she left at her master's grave being the entire field that they're fighting in is so poetic. And we get another emotional standoff with F drawing her sword to defend others and protect peace, and declaring that she is a Jedi. We also get this very cool parallel to Anakin and Obi-Wan's fight on Mustafar here. I don't want to give it away, but it's these twists on the classic Star Wars stories that we've seen before that I think are so cool in Star Wars Visions. And I can't not talk about the animation, that final cut of F and her master coming at each other with the lightsabers drawn is so fluid and cinematic. I just want to give Kinema Citrus all the money to let them tell whatever Star Wars story they want to in animation. I know that they would make something special, especially with Hitoshi Haga, the director, on board. He has worked on so many legendary anime projects, and he's proved himself that he can tell very fresh but classic Star Wars stories. I'm going to do a deeper dive episode on this short in the future, but I just wanted to give it its flowers right here. The next short we have is The Smuggler from Studio Trigger, who did the Twins short from Volume 1. This is a short that I think is good. I think it tells a pretty interesting story, but I think it relies too much on exposition at the forefront. I think they could have gotten away with being a bit more subtle in their storytelling to let the audience piece together that this is a crown prince that is hiding from the Empire, and obviously a tragedy had occurred in the past, and now he needs to get off world. I think that was a bit too heavy-handed. I do like the cast of characters that we get. This teenage smuggler who's on her own and needs to make money any way she can, and she gets wrapped up in this galaxy-spanning adventure. The grandma protector of the Crown Prince is a cool character who is an ex-Jedi, and I really like how she hides her lightsaber. That sounded sexual, but if you watch the short, you'll get it. And there is some good world building done in here between the Crown Prince and how his people look up to him, and how much he respects the planet that he is from, and you can sense the drive that he has to eventually free his world. I can see this short getting a follow-up. It seems like they have set it up to maybe continue the story in a future season. But overall, I just enjoyed this. However, I didn't get much out of it. Next up, we have The Bird of Paradise. This was a short I was really looking forward to because I thought in the previews the animation style was really beautiful. It has a video game cutscene feel to it, but not in a gimmicky way. Unfortunately, I think the animation really does the heavy lifting in this story, and unfortunately, I wasn't really drawn in to the main character here. I didn't particularly like her. I found her annoying, and I know that's harsh, but in a short, you really have to have the audience connect with the character immediately, and if you don't, the whole short kind of just falls apart. The thing with long-form storytelling is you're able to have a character that is maybe annoying or immature up front, and then over time you get to see them learn and grow as a character. But when you only have 22 minutes to do that, the change feels a bit jarring, and that annoying portion of the character that we see is a good chunk of this short. And it's a classic Star Wars story, someone who is impatient, who rushes into battle and gets hurt because of it, and her having to deal with that ego and lack of patience. These are all things we've seen in Star Wars before. I unfortunately just did not connect with the main character and her journey here. The best part about this short is the animation, specifically the creative choice to have us see the world from her perspective after she is blinded by the lightsaber. The way particles light up around her as she feels her way through the environment, and it brightens her surroundings as she touches things, and as she becomes more in tune with the Force, she sees the world more clearly. And then she has these grand moments where the colors all come together, and they paint these portraits of the light side, the dark side, and even a master who teaches her how to become more in tune with her dark side. All the pieces are there, and I like it in concept, but I think the execution isn't as strong. Alright, we have finally made it to the final episode of Visions Volume 3, and the best episode from Visions Volume 3. The short is titled Black. It is by David Production and legendary animator Shinya Ohira, who has worked on animated masterpieces like Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, and Akira. He has lent his talents and vision to the Star Wars galaxy, and he did not disappoint. Black is the most insane piece of Star Wars you will ever see. It is chaotic, it's ambiguous, it's unsettling, it's frightening, it's beautiful, and it's thought-provoking. I've never seen anything like this in Star Wars. I've rarely seen anything like this in animation in general. The way he blends so many different art styles into this 13-minute short while also making it feel extremely cohesive is so impressive. The pacing of this story, while it is a nonstop flurry of imagery and flashes and explosions and close-up shots of the stormtrooper's face, there is a rhythm to it, and the way he uses silences and the breathing of the stormtrooper and also horrific imagery really just paints such a vivid picture that is so immersive. You could watch this without the sound on and you would get just as much out of it. As I've alluded to, this is not for everyone. I don't think everyone will enjoy this short, but I think everyone should experience it. There are so many different interpretations you can get from it. I personally saw it as a war in the final moments of this stormtrooper's life in his mind, reconciling the other version of himself that chose to join the Empire and leave his peaceful life and lover behind. And we are witnessing the horrors of war through his fractured psyche. And that's only after 2 watches. If I watch this again and again, I'm sure I could get so much more out of it. But I encourage you to watch it and draw your own conclusions. The last piece of this masterpiece of a short is the music and the way it weaves between silences and this very upbeat, jazzy tune to the more introspective orchestral piece is flawlessly executed and adds so much to the rhythm and pace of this story. I have so much more to say, but I do want to save this for a longer form episode just discussing Black. Look out for that. I'm excited to talk more about this short. It is easily the best short from this season and what Star Wars Visions should strive to be. Genre-bending, boundary-breaking, and a feast for the eyes through animation. But that's all I got for today. Let me know your thoughts on Star Wars Visions Volume 3. As I said, I enjoyed this overall. I enjoy my time with Visions every time it comes out. I was just left a little disappointed with this season. That being said, though, there are some really high highs in here. I think Black is incredible. I think The Lost Ones, the follow-up to Village Bride, lived up to my expectations, and I was so happy to see them continue that story, and I want to see more from that studio. I want to see more from F, and I want to see more Star Wars Visions. I cannot wait for the next season of this. I'm still a huge believer and proponent for this series, even if this isn't my favorite season. I think it is well worth the investment to continue telling stories like this in animation. So let me know your favorite shorts from Visions Volume 3. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe and like this video. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.